Welcome to the new podcast, The Mick, a Mook, and a Mike, hosted by Billy O'Connor and Frank Pace.
Alrighty, it's Saturday, the 19th of September. I'm Frank Pace. There's my partner, Billy. It's an Irish Billy O'Connor.
There you go.
So, Billy, we had over 6,000 views on a 9/11 show last week.
What an exponential jump. I mean, that was really gratifying.
Wait. An exponential jump?
An exponential jump.
What does that mean?
Come on. It means compounded. I think we had 1,200 or 1,300 views with Billy Van Zandt.
Yeah.
And to jump to almost 6,000 views is really gratifying. And I got to tell you, I heard from firefighters that I hadn't heard from in 20 years. And actually reached out and told me that they really loved the show.
Well, that must have made you feel pretty good.
Oh, yeah, because, 20 years of my life, I never would want to write or talk about firefighters without the real love I have for the profession.
And reverence.
And reverence for certain guys. Like we talked about the exceptional men like Patty Brown, etc. And then I had put up a post on Facebook recently about Patty Brown's last transmission, and they told him, get out of the building. And he says, I'm not coming out. I'm refusing the order, and I'm continuing up. I have too many burn victims. Wow. Which is, it was gratifying, really gratifying. Frank, and I owe that to you guys, Derek, and you for starting this whole project. But today...
Not yet.
Not yet?
First, we're going to apologize to our viewers because we had promised that they would have the book this week.
Right, that's true.
I'm at a loss for words, but we have a paper shortage in this country. I hear we have a coin shortage, and now we can't get paper to produce enough books because so many books are being published during the COVID crisis that everybody wants books. So the book will be out in about 2 weeks, I believe. But
so there you go. United States is a paper shortage. So from now on, I recommend using both sides of the toilet paper. we want to save the trees. You understand?
Well, unfortunately, probably the reason was paper shortage is because everybody was hoarding toilet paper.
You know what? Who knew that when the COVID thing comes, the big rush was going to be for toilet paper to save the day? I mean, it's unfathomable. You can never underestimate the intelligence of the American public. You really can't.
No kidding.
No kidding.
So
Lincoln said that.
Now you can introduce our guest.
Now I can tell you that I am honored. I mean, that I'm lucky and fortunate that Frank is from Jacksonville, is an old friend of NBA, ABA legend, Hall of Famer, Artis Gilmore.
And we have
never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be sitting at a table talking to Artis Gilmore.
Well, stick around, pal. You're about to witness him in the flesh. But first, Derek has a little introduction of Artis, about a 3-minute piece that'll give everybody who isn't aware of who Artis is. I don't know who that could be.
For all you people in Eastern Europe.
Here you go. Coming up.
I want to see this highlight myself.
At 7'2" and 240 pounds, Artis Gilmore was the most imposing player in the old ABA.
Gilmore turns around and shoots and scores.
What he did in the ABA should not be forgotten. See, when you start talking about the elite, the diesel engines versus the locomotives, he was an absolute monster.
As a collegian, Gilmore led Jacksonville University to the 1970 national title game, and his 22.7 rebounds per game remain an NCAA career record. When it was time to turn pro, he also showed off a polished sense of humor.
Artis, the big question here is, why did you choose the ABA over NBA?
Well, I like the colors of the basketball.
You like that better?
Yes.
As a member of the Kentucky Colonels in 1972, Gilmore not only won Rookie of the Year honors, he also was named the ABA's most valuable player.
He was such a force. One night he grabbed 40 rebounds against our team. He said, all right, everything coming off the backboard now is mine. And that was it.
He certainly was our ABA's Wilt Chamberlain. When you have 34-inch thighs and a 28-inch waist, and you're 7'2", and you're one of the strongest people on earth, if you got too close to the basket, it was over.
With Gilmore in the middle, Kentucky was an ABA powerhouse. And in the 1975 finals against the Indiana Pacers, his dominating play on both ends of the floor helped the Colonels to their only championship.
The emphasis was on Artis to lead us with the rebounding, shot blocking, and scoring.
There they go into Gilmore. You got to deny him that ball if you can, because look what he can do.
He did this in the biggest games, and when he won the MVP, it was well-deserved.
After the ABA-NBA merger in 1976, Gilmore became a Chicago Bull, and a new league learned that despite his quiet off-court demeanor, he was a force in the paint.
We sometimes call him the gentle giant because of his personality, but wouldn't nobody mess with him.
Gilmore was a six-time All-Star as a member of both the Bulls and the Spurs. Known for his consistency, he still holds the NBA record for career field goal percentage.
Gilmore rebounds his miss, and that's an easy one for Artis.
He had great leadership qualities. He was a great teammate. He didn't want to do anything but win. I have nothing but the utmost respect for him as a ball player, and I have so much respect to him as a person and a friend. Artis Gilmore deserved to be in the Hall of Fame.
Hey, we're back. That was the last clip. That was the last clip of it anyway. But when we get Artis going to join us in a second. We'll have him. I believe we're going to get him very shortly.
I'm delighted that when they showed about the 40 rebounds that he did against the Nets, that it was Dr. J that said that it was the 40 rebounds, because I had written that down as one of the most remarkable stats that I had read, that he would get 40 rebounds in one game. That's pretty incredible.
There he is. We have him, Derek?
The man himself, the A-Train.
Big fella, how you doing?
Okay, absolutely great, guys. Just wonderful. First of all, Billy, I just wanted to say, compliment you on the 9/11. Congratulations to all of the guys who have been associated with the firemen. 9/11 just happened to be a special date for me as well. My mother turned 80 years old on that particular date, and I just think about it so often, and so many people lost their lives, and so many special caretakers or workers was contributing to the positive things that happened to rebuild since that time.
Well, Artis, that's a marvelous thing to say. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure all the first responders that are tuning in today because of last week's show would really appreciate it as well. That's a really nice thing to say, Artis. Thank you very, very much.
So, Artis, let me ask you, are you in a spaceship now? I mean, you look like you're in the cabin of a spaceship.
Well, I compliment my daughter. She has been instrumental in helping, assisting me with this new technology. And, Frank, congratulations to you guys on your podcast and the success of it. But my success is still developing when I utilize my daughter as assistance. She's not here right now. It's a little quiet spot here, but yeah, this is my space.
So, Artis, the first thing I've got to ask you is, what happened to your afro?
Well, I must tell you the story is what happened is I decided to go to this the barber, the Barbara, and I think nature cut just a little bit too much off. And I got a litigation, a file suit. So, I'm just waiting for everything to come back up. And, once I win, if I, get rewarded from this litigation, guess what? I'm gonna have the fro back again.
Because you used to, I know you're 7'2", but you used to look about 7'4", 7'5", 7'6", even with that afro. I think Derek has a vintage photo of Artis when. Let's let Derek look for that. But I know we saw the photo of what your afro looked like in the promo for the Hall of Fame. But
that's him on the car. He's
on the what?
You guys won't be able to see.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see.
He's on the card.
You can see it.
Great. So
okay.
Tell us when he's back, and that's great. So Artis, in your honor, Billy and I and Derek, we're all wearing Gilmore shirts.
I'm ready.
I like that. That's great, guys. That is wonderful.
I was mad, Frank. I told Frank I wanted a 3-piece suit with the same name on it. You know what I mean? I want it done right. What is this? A shirt? He can do better than that. Come on, he's a producer, for God's sake.
Yeah, we really need to talk to the producer, Frank Pace, about that.
So, Artis, your birthday is coming up on the 21st. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, sir. Happy birthday, sir.
That's right. That's right. What birthday am I celebrating now?
33.
When you turn 50, you say, "Oh my God, I'm half of 100." Wow, that's amazing. But 20-something years later, now you say, "Hey,
you notice how they keep getting?
Another birthday."
You notice how they keep getting faster these decades? You know, 40 to 50, 50 to 60 flew, 60 to 70's flying. I'm 72, and I'm saying, how'd that happen? Like crazy.
Yeah, I know, Billy. I totally agree. That is accelerated speed.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Artis. Everybody knows you went to Jacksonville University, or everybody who knows you know you went to Jacksonville University. But the thing that I didn't know, and you can share with the people, is you had originally signed with Villanova. Isn't that correct? You were originally going to go to Villanova, and George Raveling discovered you. What's that story?
Well, actually, Frank, I don't know how much time we have. But actually, I graduated from high school in Dothan, Alabama. In fact, during that time playing basketball with the holidays, we played a basketball game up in, Montgomery from Dothan is up about 100 miles or so. But anyways, all the recruit, we're still talking about segregation and all black schools and that time frame. Of course, John Lewis's era. During those ball games, we played about 4 ball games in one day, and only the scouts were at this particular these games. And George Raveling and Eddie Holbrook and just a host of other scouts were there, coaches. And so because of academic issues in high school, the best choice was for me to attend Gardner-Webb, and because of the academic aspect
didn't you go to Villanova first with Howard Porter?
No, we were there.
Okay.
Because I've spoken with George Raveling, and we were working out, and hopefully that I would be able to get my grades up and everything, and join them. But during the summer, I spent the entire summer in Philadelphia. Well, I said Philadelphia. Where is Villanova located?
Philadelphia.
Well, that's close enough. Yeah. So, we were there. I remember Jack Kraft and George Raveling. George was just an assistant during that time. He wasn't really just actually part of the staff. I think later on he became part of the staff, but mainly he recruited me, and we were there with Howard Porter, and we played quite a bit of basketball. But in the fall, that's when I returned to Gardner Webb. But as Gardner Webb extended, their intention, initially the intent was to move to a 4-year program.
But they were a junior college
there was a junior college, yes.
When you went there.
Yes, when I first entered, and then the objective was to add a 3rd and a 4th year, and I would have been in that class, the first graduating class. But other things developed and other things happened. My dear friend, who was my real dear friend during that time, he said, "Man, listen, I was recruited."
And what was his name, Artis?
His name was Ernie Fleming. I was going to get to that eventually. But anyways, Ernie and we decided to attend Gardner Webb at the same time. Yeah, that's my friend Ernie. And so Ernie was recruited by Joe Williams and Tom Wasden during the time he was at Durfee High School in Fall River, Massachusetts. And so after that, Ernie's grades were not that of whereas he could enter straight into JU. So we both were there together at Gardner Webb, and then Ernie said later, "Man, I'm not going to stay here any longer, but I'm going to contact Joe Williams and hopefully they will accept me to come to. I think I can get into at Jacksonville." And so he said, "Would you like to come along with me?" And he said he called Joe Williams in and wrote him a letter and says, "Yeah, I'm ready to come to I'm ready to come to Jacksonville University. And I have this friend of mine too, and he's about 7 feet tall. He'd like to be my teammate." And of course they asked, "Well, who is this guy?" And I said, "Oh, Artis Gilmore." I said, "Well, okay, we go up and take a look at him." And some of the stories that Joe Williams and Tom Wasden can share with you that are pretty interesting, really fascinating.
So, Artis, I know the Gardner Webb is in Boiling Springs, North Carolina, and I know you were faced with some real challenges there and some prejudices there. How did you get out of Boiling Springs? Is it true that they smuggled you out? Somebody smuggled you out?
That's the closest thing to it. And, I think just paranoid that we were concerned about the coaches and the staff, that they certainly would have the airports covered and the bus station. So Ernie and I had a friend of ours. We jumped in the back of our car and moved to the state line and made that transfer with the personnel from Jacksonville, and that's where we was able to move forward rather than go through the preliminary process, which was catch a flight or a bus.
And I think, as I recall, you told me that they smuggled you out late at night because you didn't even want to try to leave Gardner Webb during the day so that nobody could spot you.
Why? Would have been a backlash? Is that it? Or
yeah, Gardner Webb was going to become a.
Their intention was they were moving forward with the additional program school senior moving.
It was going to become a 4-year school, and Artis and Ernie were eligible to leave.
I got you. Now I understand. I thought they smuggled them out like in a rug, like Cleopatra, like they got to get them out.
They almost did. I believe Artis told me they put them under a couple of blankets and went in the back seat of a station wagon.
Let me ask you two guys.
That sounds good, Frank.
Well, it sounded good when you told me it.
Well, during that time, I had some really deep thoughts about issues that we all were facing during that time in the country. So it was a very uncomfortable time. I remember back in '68, of course that they had just assassinated Martin Luther King, and I think I was a freshman at that time. So that's when certainly there was a lot of concern, and we didn't know what kind of a reaction that we would receive. So Yeah, I think we took we went to the extreme.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you guys know each other when you were in college? Did you meet at Jacksonville U, or did you know each other? Or?
Well, absolutely.
Did I know Frank?
Yeah.
No.
Did you know him from soccer, or did you know him from? He knew you from basketball.
No. I never got to meet that.
I tell you what,
Frank and I, man, every day we would have lunch. We had a really small cafeteria here on the campus, and all the guys we were like family. I mean, it was like a little brother. In fact, he is my little big brother now. But we sit at the tables together. This school was so small. I think what do we have? The student population
2,800. 2,800. And 900.
That's after we had gone to the NC2A tournament, and then all of a sudden we got this accelerated numbers of kids decided to come to university. But before then, Frank, I don't think we had. I think we were lucky the past 2,000.
Yeah, and 900 people lived on campus. We became the smallest school ever to advance to the NCAA finals, which we lost against UCLA. But I want to tell you, the first time I saw Artis, I was with Coach Williams, and I don't know whether you were on a recruiting trip or what it was, but he said, "You see that guy right there pointing to you? I think you were playing on the courts, down on the outdoor courts." He said, "If we get that guy, I'll be a good coach."
Those his favorite words. He and Tom Bowles. He said, "Man, you made me a great coach, and so he made me a great player as well."
Well, when you guys played UCLA in '69, right?
70.
70. Okay.
69 season.
And I was always a big college basketball fan, and I could never put it together why I didn't remember that game. Was because I was in Vietnam that year, and we didn't watch the NCAAs. But I had seen you about a decade ago in the stands when Jacksonville University was playing a preseason game against the University of Florida. And I'm 60 years old as a freshman at the University of Florida. And I used to go to every basketball game because they had the 2 championship years there that year. And my friend Matty Kilcullen, who's a friend of Frank's as well, was coaching Jacksonville U. And I saw you in the stands. I was about 3 rows behind you. And to be honest, you're not hard to pick out in the crowd, And I didn't say anything to you. I said, that's Artis Gilmore. And I couldn't put it together, Jacksonville U or that championship extraordinary run for a small school against UCLA, because I had been in Nam and I couldn't figure out why that year was missing.
Yeah.
Billy, it was the technology. We passed information. I think they said they used Pony Express.
Yeah. Like I like to tell my grandchildren, I said, "How old are you, Grandpa?" I said, "I was around when the Dead Sea was still sick." I've been around a while.
So, why don't you go into a little bit about your relationship with Coach Williams, Artis? What was it about Coach Williams that made you feel so secure?
Frank, a couple of things I mentioned earlier. Just a few years earlier, I graduated from high school in Dothan, Alabama, and schools were during that time was segregated, and my hometown was from Dothan, about 32 miles, west, right across the Florida line. And so even as a kid growing up in my hometown, Chipley, Florida, we dealt with just incredible amount of intense racism. And I was just uncomfortable for my entire, all of a sudden, my first time after graduating from high school in Dothan, Alabama, I entered an environment, a mixed environment, a white, and then this was the first time ever, and I was just, I was so tense because of my relationships as a kid growing up, and that environment. So now all of a sudden, suddenly, I'm here, and so, and I don't think Eddie understood.
Eddie Holbrook.
Eddie Holbrook.
The coach at Gardner Webb.
He his personality was just totally opposite, you know, and he treated us pretty well, but he laid down some rules. And but afterwards, then I come to Jacksonville University, meeting Joe and talking with him. He made me feel so comfortable. He made me feel like a man, a mature young man, and then instead of a young idiot boy, you know, I wasn't a boy anymore, you know, and all of a sudden that's when mentally things, you know, start to come into focus, and I was able to relate a little bit better, you know, and Joe was the person that made that positive impact in my life.
That's great. And Joe's still alive, and he's living in Mississippi, and he's got a great sense of humor, and he was the son of he was born in Oklahoma, and he's the son of a minister. Do you think that ministerial background sort of made him who he was, that understanding person that he was?
I absolutely believe that, Frank. I think Joe, he was very comfortable around black people, you know, and one of his real good friends that he met, and he felt that, you know, he was, Joe himself were not a certain individual how I felt about them and him. So he introduced me to a local guy named Lorenzo Reddick here in Jacksonville, so that I would sort of be, and I guess because as a silent person, not speaking up, not a verbal person that speaks, because, you know, I was continuing to be in this shell, and shell felt like I was, you know, just not part of I guess a community at that time. And so Joe kind of used Lorenzo Reddick as the kind of the go-between. Well, listen, you know, Lorenzo, Artis is not talking, not saying anything, so, you know, can you kind of find out what's going on with this guy, you know? And so we want him to be comfortable. We want him to feel like he's at home. And so between the two of them, then Joe was able to relate to me and understood, you know, what it was like to be able to deal with a young black kid. I
remember in an article in Sports Illustrated, December of '69, I think, when you had just gone up to Evansville and won that tournament, said, Artis speaks in hushed whispers as if he's been yelled at too loud in his life. And that was a very moving something that it made an impact on me, because you were so sensitive and so kind, but it was like you had been yelled at too many times in your life growing up. I'm going to tell you also that the girls, now you weren't married then, so the girls at Edward Waters College, which was a black school on the other side of Jacksonville, knew who you were, because we had a payphone on the second floor Grether where the basketball players lived, and the payphone would like ring constantly. It would ring, it'd say, is Artis there? Hang on. Is Ernie there? Hang on. Ring, is Artis there? Ring, is Artis there? Another rings, 2 more rings for Ernie. So the phone was constantly ringing for girls that wanted to hook up with you, for want of a better phrase. It got to the point that it was ringing so much that Greg Nelson, who was a big 6'7", burly guy from Evansville, Indiana, came out and he ripped the phone out of the off the wall. You remember that?
Yeah. And Frank, in a little addition to that, because his roommate was Von Wedekin. And Vaughn, you know, those guys was students. And we were working on being students. And so, as you indicated before, that was our communication with the kids right across the bridge. That phone was pretty busy quite often. You know, right in the middle of their studies, you know, the doors open and the phone. You remember back in those days, a phone ring was, I mean, it was like a fire bed. So, you know, it's very disturbing. So absolutely, I could understand, looking back, you understood, I can understand what Greg was experiencing.
Yeah, Greg was experiencing jealousy. Because he wanted to study some of that anatomy that you were studying too.
It seems to me, Frank, that's a small fault in a good man that a lot of women were chasing after him. That's a very small fault, you know, in a good man. Frank was talking about, you're talking about 50 years ago when you were 19, 20 years old. And as I was doing research just on your life in general, one thing stuck out, a quote from your mom and dad that you mentioned about your mom and dad, and it really blew me away. It said, one way to live. There's only one way to live, and that's the right way. And if everybody had that attitude towards life, it'd be a hell of a lot better world than we were living in. There's only one way to live, the right way. And that's a hell of a quote, I thought.
Yeah, and Artis has always lived the right way. He hasn't changed a bit since he was 19 years old. And that's a great thing that I can say about you, and it's a great achievement that you've accomplished, that despite all of your accolades and all of your fame and everything, you haven't changed one bit.
You never forget where you came from, and
Yep.
that's not something you can say about a lot of guys. I can think of some of my childhood friends that, regardless of how far they go, they never forgot where they came from. That's real people.
So, Artis, talking about the 69.
One thing, let me ask. I wonder if I haven't forgotten about all those things, if I could go back to my house and get some additional hair. My mother and father, they were really special. My dad was about 25 years older than my mother. And, he was from, can you imagine, if he was alive today, he'd be 120 years old.
Wow.
And so they were an extraordinary, unusual couple. But you're right about the fact that they believe in responsibility and treating us for what, we were dealing with. They had the right outlook and very positive outlook that they certainly was able to encourage their children to be able to accept and move forward in life.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you grew up? How many kids were you? I know you got your height from your mother because your father was like 5'6", and your mother was like
No,
6'1".
come on, Frank. He was at least 5'8" and a half.
And your mother was over 6 feet. But tell me about how many kids you grew up with, and how big a house you grew up in.
Well, it wasn't a house; it was a little barn, and there was 8 of us, actually 9, but one passed earlier, and I was 3 brothers in each bed, and then there was 2 girls. They lived in the front room with my mother and father. So, and we had sort of a 3-room, and I said literally, it probably was a barn because it had no windows, had a number of things it was like, and one of them was not indoor plumbing. So we had just a pretty extraordinary environment growing up, and I remember that story I was sharing with you earlier. I went to New York and I was had my own bedroom, a little 1-room place, and I was working and everything, and I said, man, it's such a difference when you turn over, you're not rolling over, making contact with one of your brothers, other brothers. So, but it was pretty
tough
special.
Yeah.
So it was beyond tough, Billy. I mean, that's the description. The closest description. It was challenging. Really challenging.
And you didn't really have any basketball shoes until you got to high school, did you?
not even then, Frank. Just as a description of one of the pair of shoes that I wore, it was like what they call tennis shoe. You had the rubber that goes across the top of them. You slip your feet in, and it had the really thin sides. Like when your toes start putting too much pressure on the side, and all of a sudden start ripping, and you take some cardboard and put it in the corner to try to give you some pad and try to preserve that rip, just continue slowly moving forward. And and that's what we were dealing with. And my basketball was, I think I was like 15 years old. Before I started, because this additional story, part of that was when I was 12 years old. I wore size 12, and then when I reached the age of 13, all of a sudden I'm wearing a 13. But guess what? There was no 13s in Chipley or 14s in Chipley my next year. So for those years, we walked the street without shoes. And, so I look back at all of my former legends and colleagues that I had to wear. I mean, like Kareem and Lou Alcindor at that time from Powell Memorial High School. I'm playing catch up with all these guys in the NBA, and so. But fortunately, with the patience and we talked about the environment, how intense it was, and the way I grew up, and growing up in Florida, the focus has always been football. So basketball was no big deal, and especially in Chipley. So there was a lot to overcome, and some obstacles that's been truly blessed.
Well, you obviously overcame them, so much so that in 1980 I was repping Pony shoes. And you wouldn't wear Pony because you were wearing Nike. And my client would say, remember Carl Rule?
Yeah.
The big German guy. He would say, this is supposed to be your friend. Why won't he wear the Pony? And I said, because you're not paying him enough. He said, fuck him, I'll pay him whatever he wants. Just get him in Pony. But we couldn't get him in Pony. We couldn't get him to switch out of Nike.
I got to ask you a question, Artis, as I was doing some research before we start talking about your extraordinary career, But your wife's name is Enola Gay. And I'm a bit of a World War II buff, and when I saw the Enola Gay, of course, that's Colonel Tibbetts' name of the airplane, named after his mother, who dropped the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. There has to be a story there. Why did your wife's parents name her Enola Gay?
Well, Billy, thanks. The one thing, they had an opportunity, or they went to the movies to see this particular story, and they were so moved by it. And of course, her mother was expecting a child, and then they said, of course, if we have a daughter, we will name her Enola Gay. And so there you have it. That's how she actually received that name. But let me add to that story. So, as you indicated before, Billy, all these places that you had a chance to travel and spend some time in, and likewise with Enola and myself, traveling to Japan. So, can you imagine?
Wow!
All of a sudden,
I didn't even think of that.
Enola says, I'm not comfortable. Really comfortable. I'm Miss Gilmore. Miss Gilmore. So finally, she was pushed. Somebody asked her, says, what is your name? And so finally, it came out, my name is Enola Gay. And they said, oh, wow, famous name, a very famous name in Japan.
Oh, so, I bet it's a famous name in Japan.
Yeah.
I actually think that movie was with Robert Taylor, if I'm not mistaken, that when they talked about Colonel Tibbetts. And I think he might be from Yonkers, Frank. I think Tibbetts Brook might be named after Colonel Tibbetts.
Is that right?
Who dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima.
Yeah.
But when I saw the name, I was like, there has to be a story here. This is like, it's such an extraordinary name.
Yeah, Billy, thanks. Thanks for sharing that story, and certainly she received an awful lot of teaching. In fact, I think we have a little collectible plaque with the signatures of Colonel Tibbet and his co-pilot, and we have it someplace around. Hopefully,
Wow.
I can find it for Frank.
So, Artis, why don't you get into a little bit about that 69-70 team? Who were some of the teammates? What made that year so special for you?
Okay, this particular year, 1969-70, we were a pretty decent team. We played everybody we played. We literally crushed them, and so except for Florida State. And by the way, see if I can remember the teammates. If not, Frank, you can assist me with that. Von Whittaker,
Yep.
Danny Hawkins, Rod McIntyre, Greg Nelson, Chip Dublin, who else? Rex Morgan.
Rex Morgan.
Yeah. And
You said Vaughn, Greg Nelson,
yeah,
Rusty,
Vaughn,
Rusty, Curtis,
Rusty Baldwin,
Curtis,
Curtis Brewer,
Ken Selke.
Ken Selke. Yeah, and that group of guys, if we were continuing to talk about the race relationships back during that time, and then of course it would continue to be very tense. And so, but this team continued. It was we become a really close knit family. The guys and even before I heard some of the stories about black athletes engaging, not necessarily engaging, but entering white institutions, white schools, and they were just having a very difficult time, especially with merging with their teammates. But this particular team, we were a family, and we just worked out very well together. So that particular year, as I said, my personality, Joe Williams and Tom Wasden, both a combination really helping me to develop as a person. And so with that, I was able to provide leadership for the team, but not as a spokesperson, but as a person, as an example on the floor, working and playing hard and making things a little bit easier for my teammates. Is that one particular shot that you put on the screen earlier, Frank, and Greg and I, we joke about that particular shot right now. And I said, well, Greg, listen, Greg Nelson is standing in that shot, number 55. I said, of course, if you would have been taking responsibility playing defense, that shot wouldn't have never happened.
But extraordinary to take a school that small against mighty UCLA and John Wooden's team in the final game.
Well, one other thing.
Just extraordinary.
In that year, the entire SEC had one black player in the entire SEC, and that was a guy, Percy, I can't remember his last name, but he was at Vanderbilt, and he had been there for 1 year prior to Jacksonville. But when we played UCLA integrated their team in 1927. So they had a 50-year head start toward integration, 52-year head start toward in over the schools in the South.
In the SEC,
Yep.
yeah.
And you know what Coach Wooden said, don't call me a wizard, because the coach that usually has the best players usually wins. He said, I always had the best players.
It's remarkable to me as a total layman. I mean, for me to talk basketball with you is like you talking firefighting with me, but a total layman. But as a layman, it amazes me that somebody says, well, the guy's 7'2", of course he can play basketball. No, it doesn't work like that. It's pain, it's discipline, and it's work ethic. I mean, there's plenty of guys 7'2" that can't play basketball. Never mind taking to the heights that you did.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, correct, Billy. there is a number of oh gosh, and the other person we left out Pembroke Burrows on that team.
Yeah, I meant to interrupt you, say Pembroke, and I forgot to interrupt that. Pembroke was a 7-footer.
He was also 7 foot, and Pembroke was a great player, and he would have been an outstanding professional player, but because in those days, if you get drafted high, then, I think Pembroke perhaps was maybe a 3rd round draft choice, and he probably should have been, gone much higher than that. But anyways, when he tried out, and if they had NBA squad, if they had a 12-man roster, and all the guys had guaranteed contract, no matter whether they was making, $25,000 or $30,000 a year, they were not going to cut an individual for that amount of money. And so, basically, that's what happened to Pembroke Burrows, who was also 7 feet. And Pembroke became a state police officer, and certainly he was the first black, officer in the state of Florida. And he was very successful in making a lot of positive things happen for people of color.
Yeah, he retired after 44 years on the state police force. And when he was cut by Seattle, I believe he had, a month later, he had been asked by another team, to rejoin that team. But he had already passed the police force test, and he said, I don't want to give up on a sure thing for something speculative as the NBA. Because he realized that, unless you are an Artis Gilmore, unless you are a Kareem, which he wasn't, he would probably be a lower half player on his pro team, and those guys are interchangeable. They come and go every, 2 or 3 years.
Plus, correct me if I'm wrong, but back in 70, 71, what was there, 9 NBA teams? I mean, it wasn't as expansive as it is now. It wasn't a world game.
Well, there were the ABA had teams also, but you can answer that, Artis.
Yeah, I mean, the smaller, tougher to get into the NBA. I mean, it was less teams.
Absolutely, Billy. One of the things that was so different about the NBA is that, as I mentioned earlier, if they had a roster, and I think probably the top guys were making probably close to $100,000. I remember this one story in particular, especially when Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain was competing against each other, and then one of the guys came up with this contract. And maybe it was Bill Russell. He said he got $100,000, and then Wilt negotiated his. He wanted $101,000. So, but you look back in that era. No, there was not. The guys were not making an awful lot of money, and if they had a 12-man roster, and the guys go from making $50,000 down to like $20,000. Number 12 is making $20,000 a year. They were not going to cut that individual to bring a new rookie up. So those are like guaranteed contracts, and when like release that individual and paying like now popcorn money, not even popcorn money. That's in the league today.
And because also. The black players were still dealing with a lot of prejudice then. So the 3 or 4 guys that were making $20,000, if they weren't superstars, they would keep them around if they were a white guy, but they would change them if they were black guys.
Well, back in that era, back in the 70s, early 70s, I guess late 60s, there was a number of great left-handed centers. I mean, Willis Reed, yourself,
Lanier,
Cowens, Lanier, Walt Bellamy. Was Walt Bellamy the left-handed?
I don't know if he was.
It seemed to be a lot of great left-handed centers.
You're right, Billy. There was a large number of left-handers in the game, and certainly competing against so many of them. They all created different problems for me, but it was a lot easier, when a right-handed guy is preparing to take a jump shot and your left-handed body just comes right across, it makes it a good matchup, a good blend, and certainly a great opportunity to block an individual shot.
When you talk about left-handers, Artis, you're pretty unassuming, but I'm going to ask you a trivia question. Do you know who the greatest left-handed scorer in the history of professional basketball is?
Bill Russell.
Try again.
Oh, the greatest
left-handed scorer in the history of professional basketball.
This is ABA and NBA now.
This is ABA and NBA.
Merged.
Oh. Oh, let's see. Don't say it was me.
It was you.
No.
It was you.
Artis Gilmore.
You see, I keep up with all the stats, and that's one. I got all of the stats, you know.
Well, you were saying how these left-handed players created problems for you. You got to see the way that people talk about you. And some of them talking about McAdoo and Walton and Jabbar, and they talked about you as the best shot blocker ever. I mean, they talk about you as creating nothing but problems.
Right. Well, you know, there was a challenge, and certainly I enjoyed the challenge. Every night when we had a challenging matchup, you know, like if I'm playing Dan Issel, when of course after he had departed from as my teammate, or either Dave Collins, you know, they created different issues for me when they take the ball on the perimeter and they could take the jump shot around right around the foul line. You know, having to go out and chase those individuals, and then they're able to put it on the floor and drive it to the basket. So, and Kareem, of course, coming across the middle with that hook shot, that created a problem for me. So I found different ways to challenge those individuals. With Kareem, you know, I used kind of force him. He was catch the ball in rhythm coming across the lane with that really fabulous hook shot. But if I forced him to change his rhythm a little bit, he was not going to be quite as successful as as a teardrop.
Yeah, it wasn't as automatic.
Who would you say was the toughest center for you to play night in and night out?
Well, every night, as I said before, between Bill Walton, when he was healthy, he was just a tremendous player. In fact, we played them, and that was the year, 77, 78 is the year they eliminated Chicago and moved on to win the NBA championship, beating Philadelphia.
That's with Portland? With Portland?
Portland Trailblazers, yeah.
I really think you guys should have won that series.
Yeah, we should have.
Yeah.
You imagine it was a 3-game series, the best of 3, and we should have won it.
Yep.
We played first in Portland, then flew all the way back to Chicago, played one, and then flew all the way back to Portland and played the third and final best 2 out of 3. And we actually they had Dave Twazik, Maurice Lucas, and Bill Walton. And the 3 of them in the last 40 seconds or 30 seconds, they had fouled out of the game. And they had a couple of points in a lead. And I know that a coach called timeout and said, let's get the ball into the big guy. There's nobody there. I think they had O'Neal or somebody. There's nobody to challenge him in it. But anyways, we inbound the ball, and one player...
Norm Van Leer.
Norm Van Leer. We didn't function as a team. We had talked about what we wanted to do, execute.
Norm Van Leer.
For whatever reason, it did not go as well, and we end up with one of a left-hander taking a jump shot around the foul line and missed it, and the game was over.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they should have won that game. And I believe they could have beat Philadelphia in the championship as well. So
I want to ask you a question. I don't know if you even want to go there, but I got to ask you because as a layman, who was the biggest trash talker that you ever ran across in the NBA? I mean, there had to be a lot of guys breaking balls, and you were known and noted for being unassuming and, quiet guy, gentle giant. Who was the guy who was the biggest ball breaker that you ran across?
Well, it mostly was out front with the guards. The big guys, you know, you didn't talk trash because you know you can get it put back in your face. You know, say, hey, you say, well, okay, man, this one is right in your mouth or something like that. Then you know that guy's going to come back and probably bring it to you while you're not ready. So there was not a whole lot of trash talking, especially on the low post, but out there on the perimeter. You know, the last few years I played with Larry Bird. Well, last year against and with Larry, and of course Michael Jordan played against him in my last year. You know, with him at the very end, half and half with him and half with Larry Bird before my 17-year career of professional basketball in America ended, and then of course 1 year in Italy.
So Larry used to get after it pretty good, huh? Larry Bird?
Oh man, he's unbelievable.
What are some of the things he would say?
I heard that.
Sorry. My last year I'm there. Just we're getting ready to play. We're finishing up, going into the half of the season, the All-Star game, and so Larry was preparing for the three-point shootout. He said, "Hey, the rest of you guys can hang it up." And I think Danny Ainge also earned a spot on that on the team as a three-point shooter. But Larry said, "Hey, this is mine." He said, "Let me put a mark on my head." So, and you all will be able to see that what I'm telling you, this is it. It's mine. The trophy is mine. And guess what?
The trophy
Larry went out and he won it. I mean, he just said he was going to do it, and he did it.
So, Artis, when you were playing in the NBA, you guys had not the support that the players have today by the team. So why don't you tell me, when you went on the road for 3 or 4 or 5 games, you had to do your own laundry, correct? And some people didn't do their own laundry. Why don't you tell me that story?
Well, quickly, we had, they gave us, they was really nice enough to provide us with 2 jerseys.
For the season.
You carry it on the road with you. And what happens is, if you play the game, there's no place to wash your jersey out. And boy, it gets pretty strong. You walk in somebody's room and say, whoa, wait a minute, what's the knockout punch? So anyway, let me tell you a quick story about one of my jerseys. So I went in there and just kind of put it in the sink or in the tub and put some water on it, and of course, squeezed all the water out. And so I said, well, this I need to dry so I can be ready for the game tomorrow. So I laid it across one of the lamps in the room. And so I'm just laying up there watching TV, not really just thinking about it. And all of a sudden I smelled something burning, And I said, oh, wait a minute. Oh, my God. I went over there, grabbed it off, and had all those little burnt spots down there. And I said, but, it's not really that noticeable. It could have been really, really serious. But that was the way that we had to deal with. And then another issue is, back in those times, you check your luggage. And we were told if we had a game that particular day, you're traveling, you're preparing to play that evening, not to check your uniform. You had to carry it on the plane with you. You check your rest of your luggage, but you brought your uniform and your sneakers on the plane with you. And so I think there was one time I forgot and checked my bag, and we arrived at the destination. I didn't have my uniform. In fact, I had to go out and play with a no-name number on the back of my jersey. A loner.
Yeah. Well, in the old days, if you played the night before, let's say you played the night before in Portland, and tomorrow you're playing in Los Angeles, you had to connect on the first flight out of Portland to fly to Los Angeles. So if you played until 10 o'clock, 7 o'clock game, and you got back to the hotel at 11 o'clock, and the first flight to Los Angeles was a 6:45 flight, you had to be on that flight. Is that right, Artis?
Absolutely. The first available flight. And that was a fine, because if you didn't take that flight and made an attempt to take a secondary flight, and if you were late rival, I mean, that was a league rule that certainly you would be fined for that, and the organization would be fined.
Yeah, that was before private flights. They were flying commercial.
Well, long before then, because when during my career in San Antonio, I mean, the luxury was in Chicago, we could get a direct flight to any destination.
Right.
But say, for an example, now, when I was in San Antonio, we would fly Southwest, and I played one night in San Antonio. We had to catch the flight the following morning. I remember Mike Dunleavy and I played backgammon there at 5:30 in the morning. So we would take a flight out of San Antonio, and we either say we were going to play in Utah. We would have to fly to either Houston or either Dallas, and then catch another flight from there to Denver, and then the next flight into Utah, play that night, and travel that back route, returning to San Antonio, preparing for a third game, 3 in 3 nights.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Well, when I was trying to handicap, I always used to look for that. The NBA on the road, third game on the road. I said, they got to be tired, Yeah, of course, it never worked, but I always tried to look for that,
I remember one night you guys were playing an exhibition game in San Diego, and I was in San Diego, and we were going to the game, and I came over to the hotel to pick you up, and I knew you were there, and you had some incredible streak going of games started, and the starting lineup was announced, and your name wasn't in the starting lineup. You had forgotten your shoes, and you had to go back.
One shoe.
One shoe.
I had one with me and one was left. But can you imagine you taking, you're preparing to get dressed for the ball game and everything, and so you're taking your equipment, and certainly your shoes are part of the equipment. I take this one shoe out, and I keep looking. Wait a minute, there's got to be another shoe in this bag, and you keep looking like a magician. This shoe has got to appear, So I know I packed them, but then they sent a bellman back into my room and pulled the shoe out, and they hustled it over there. Of course, I missed a couple of minutes of the start of the ball game.
Yep. Now, of course, they wear shoes for one night, and then they wear another pair of shoes another night. They get, if they play 82 games, they wear 82 pair of shoes.
Meanwhile, Artis got 2 jerseys.
And
good luck.
And 2 shoes. 2 shoes.
Well, 670 consecutive games is what I have written down here. 670 consecutive games, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, so much for load management, right? They said load as much stuff as you can on Artis. 670 straight games. There's an Ironman record for sure. That's great.
Well, I tell you, boy, I guess I was truly blessed, considering, some of the pictures you could see me elevating off the floor. And I remember during the time that I was at Gardner Webb, we were, playing in the junior college tournament. And boy, it was a tough game, really, really tough game. To give you an example, Frank, the final score in our game was 112 to 113. And the University of North Carolina, the final score in their game was 12 to 13. They go into the four corners.
Yep.
Dean Smith, I remember Charlie Scott was he's the first black player to play for the University of North Carolina. And Charlie standing in the corner with the ball behind his back and dribbled. They dribbled in a circle and dribbled back out. But anyways, me moving forward. What happened was I got injured in that game, and I turned my ankle, and they actually came over. And the coach took me to this location to take an injection. My ankle was like blown way up, and they took this needle out. Man, I guess it was longer than my finger, just the needle part. And they blew it up, put it in there, and shoot. I went out there and I was good for a little while, and then I guess when the feelings came back, it was really painful. But that particular incident, and I had a couple of others, one before, even when during the time I was with the Colonel, but not any of those incidents ever interfered with the fact that I was ready to play the next night.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. This is not fair because you're going to say, "Oh shit," you're going to kill me.
Oh, should I say this? Yeah. Oh shit first?
No.
Okay.
If you had to pick your top 5 teammates of all time, what would your Artis Gilmore All-Star team be?
Well, can I put them up on Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. What would Artis Gilmore's Mount Rushmore be? And
oh my God, that is such an incredible. I mean, if you look at it, I go from Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Dr. J, Michael Jordan, even now LeBron. Man, I love LeBron. His versatility, being able to play them all. He played all 5 positions in the game. But for me, I just don't know how I could do that. I think back many years ago in my rookie year, I remember meeting Joe Louis at what was the hotel out there he worked in Vegas?
Oh yeah, I know. I can't think of it.
Sinatra got him that job, I believe.
I think it was the Sands, but let's say
no, it was not the Sands.
Let's say it was Caesar's Palace.
Caesar's Palace, okay. Right? It was at Caesar's, but my point is, can you imagine? Say, who's the best, Joe Louis? Muhammad Ali, Sonny Liston, and that's the same way I would try and describe, man, Magic Johnson. He was just unbelievable. Larry Bird was phenomenal. Bill Russell, you remember watching him in the black and white show, the movies, the basketball games, and the big, huge game was on Sunday when it finally came on television. It was Philadelphia with Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. Great match, always a matchup between those two. But to take the both of them to put on my team, and I'm looking for Michael Jordan. I want to put Magic Johnson on there, and I want. Oh gosh!
How about some white guys?
Well, I said
Dan Issel.
Gave you Bird.
And Dan
I
Issel.
forgot. Wait a minute. Is Jerry West white?
Last time I looked.
But for 5 guys for you to play with, that would be compatible with your style of play, who would be a forward? Who would be a 3 guy? One guy to handle the ball, a shooting 2 guard.
A shooting 2 guard. Well, man, shoot. I don't know if I would put Michael Jordan at the 2 guard. I'm thinking, yeah.
Okay.
Michael again developed a little bit later on as a shooter. He of course, he was comfortable driving to the basket, but then later he really worked hard on being able to pull up on that mid-range shot and just knock it down, and just really diversified his game.
Okay, I'm going to take you. I'm going to take you off the hook. You've named your Mount Rushmore.
I'm dancing around this, Frank. Okay, man. And my legs are getting tired. I can't. I'm about to run.
So why don't you tell the folks out home what you're doing today, where you're working, who were some of your people that got you started at the place you're working today, and why don't you go into that a little bit?
Well, Frank, absolutely. I have to credit you working with, and my title now is Special Assistant to the President of Jacksonville University. I've been there now returned to that location about and I've been there for about 15 years. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with the young kids and watching them develop, and certainly being able to move forward in their lives. But that's something that's been pretty special to me, and certainly working with JU. And JU, before we just dropped our football team, a student population I think was in approximately 5,000 from the time that about 4,500 now, since the time that you and I were students at JU. So that is a tremendous amount of growth, but it's a small family, small environment. So I thoroughly enjoy working there. And of course now, my wife Enola Gay, Billy, as you mentioned, we got 48 years in.
Wow.
We're looking for another 48, but anyways,
well,
that's a real record. That's a real record to be proud of.
That's a real record. You say you're working at Jacksonville University with the students, but you're working with all students and not just basketball players, because I don't think the NCAA allows you to work with basketball players because there's a restriction on how many coaches you can have. But the great thing about JU for you, and the president now is Tim Cost, and President Cost was also a graduate at Jacksonville University, and he graduated from Jacksonville University in 1981, and then he went on to make a gazillion dollars in private business, and he returned to Jacksonville University about 7 years ago to become president, because he had made all the money he wanted to make, and he wanted to pay it back. So JU is fortunate that have two people who have done incredible things in their lives, paying it back. And a lot of that is attributed to Fran Kinney, who was the president when we were there. Well, she wasn't the president. She was the dean of fine arts when we were there. And Fran just passed away at 102 years old. She was almost 103. She passed away in May, and she was sort of like, I know you called her Mom Fran, but she was sort of like a mother to all of us. And she gave Tim his diploma in 1981.
Right.
I think we got a picture of Fran up there now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
well, you write a chapter about her, and If These Lips Could Talk. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously a remarkable woman.
Yeah.
I mean, in every aspect. And
yeah, so that was a picture of Fran, myself, and a good friend, John Harrison, who was also a JU graduate and a member of the Board of Trustees with all of us.
Frank, there is one photo that you and I and Jay, we were together with Fran. We took the photos.
Jay Thomas, who was another graduate of Jacksonville University.
Probably 30 years later, we took this one and we duplicated it 30 years later. So,
wow.
Jay, myself, you.
We took one in 1992, 2002. No, we took one in 83. 93 and 2003.
Well, the one in the book is from 1983. Is that correct? That's the early one.
The one in the book, Artis, which is not out yet because of a paper shortage, but will be out soon.
But
If These Lips Could Talk.
A chapter about Jay Thomas as well.
Yes.
And of course, Artis is in the John Wooden chapter.
And Artis is in. It makes a few appearances.
Yeah, it makes a few appearances throughout the book.
In the book. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting in the book, but. We don't have to ship any trees out there or anything, right? So you can have some paper.
They're burning down left and right, so you may have to.
Yeah.
That's boy. And again, Billy, man, major tribute to the firefighters and the first responders, as you mentioned. They just do an incredible job, and just from where we are, viewing the disaster and destruction that this fire path is making out there, just it's tragic and sad.
Well, Artis, the brotherhood is such that I can remember at 9/11, we had firefighters from all over the world coming in, from all over the United States, and then from Canada as well, coming in to chip in. And I had just read 2 days ago that 13 firefighters from Mexico had landed in Oregon to give a hand to the brothers in Oregon.
Yes.
And that's the way the brotherhood is. You
Yeah,
know, it's
that's
you
unbelievable.
talked about Jacksonville, you being such a tight knit, and your team in Jacksonville being such a family. Well, that's an international brotherhood with firefighters. You know, and my heart goes out to these guys. I mean, these guys that are fighting these wildfires, these hot shots they call them, mountain hot shots. You know.
Yeah, well, I mean, Billy, again, you cannot emphasize enough the job and that these first responder firefighters, what they are doing out there. I mean, you're watching fire just absorbing all the oxygen in the air, just sucking it out, and they are right there in the middle of it. You know.
They're taking a beating. There's no doubt about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
We appreciate everything you guys do to give them entertainment in their times off, and somebody to bet and lose on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Artis. Thanks very much for eating up my salary over the years.
Hey, Artis, before you go, I wanted you to tell the people a little about. I don't know if I interrupted you or if Billy interrupted you. Probably one of us interrupted you when you were getting ready to tell a little about what Fran Kinney meant to you.
Okay. Well, Frank, as you indicated with the introduction earlier, I call her mom. She was so instrumental in so many positive things with me, and just to, really sum it all up at the very end. She's done so many things before in the past, but this one thing in particular, in 2011, I was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so this summer, I mean, in August, it was like August 6th. Of course, Frank, you were there. And of course, Frank was there as well. But, I'm riding sky high. I'm on cloud 9. Well, cloud 10 at that time. I'm just enjoying life. And so we come back and return in the latter part of August. Bill Gay, whom you know, Frank, and that's another name.
And Bill Gay recently passed away in his 90s, and he was like Artis's Jacksonville father, and Fran was like Artis's Jacksonville mom.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I wanted to share a little bit about Bill Gay, but I will in a minute. But what happened was, I returned, as I said, and Bill Gay and his company, they host a picnic, and they've hosted this picnic for 50 years or maybe even longer. The length of the time of his company, existence of his company. So okay, we hosting this picnic, and it's like 110 degrees. I say 10, maybe 5 or so, but with the humidity and everything. It was really hot, like in this valley. So I'm out there, signing autographs and drinking soft drinks and eating ice cream instead of, hydrating with water. But anyways, later that afternoon, I went out, man. I just really had a hard fall in my house and messed up my arm. And so I went to the hospital. I was in the hospital for, about 4 or 5 days at this particular hospital. I'm not going to mention the name. But anyways, during the time that I'm there, so after getting checked out and everything, so on a Thursday, I'm thinking perhaps they're about to release me from this hospital. And instead, the doctor said, well, we're going to have to put a stent in your heart. We're going to have to do some surgery here, and we're going to do this. And I said, wow. So I called Mom Fran and shared that story, and she said, oh, no, wait a minute. So we're going to get you over to Mayo Clinic. And she did. They made sure that I was able to get to Mayo Clinic. And, in a situation like that, rather than have this one physician making this decision, at Mayo Clinic, you have a number of physicians working together to make a decision.
Yeah.
So anyways, I ended up with just a heart monitor in just a short time. And so that was just one little thing that made a tremendous impact on me throughout, from
And Fran was
life, but Fran was instrumental in making it happen.
Fran was like the first woman everything. She was the first woman dean of fine arts. She was the first woman president of a university in Florida. She was the first member of the Rotary Club. There are so many firsts. She was a pioneer and truly a remarkable person. Artis, I think that pretty much covers.
Let me just say this real quick, Frank, about Fran. Fran said after she joined the Rotary, she said she was the first president with a hysterectomy.
and she was so sharp. At 100 years old, she gave the commencement speech. She became the oldest ever to give a commencement speech. She did 30 minutes at a college campus. She did 30 minutes off the top of her head without a note, and she,
at 100 years old.
At 100 years old, amazing.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal.
That's the stock.
Great month.
That's the stock that we're from, Artis. That's the stock that gave us or gave you to the world.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I can't believe what a pleasure it was for me to just meet you and interview you. You're gracious as hell, man, and everything they say about you is true. And thank you so much for coming on our show. And really means a lot to me. Thank you, Artis. Really from the bottom of my heart.
You're the best, pal.
All right, Billy, Frank, thank you. Billy, and just once again to you and the gang, all the firefighters. We appreciate your contributions.
Well, I'm going to give them a big shout out, and hopefully a lot of them will be watching. And I know they appreciate it, Artis. I really do.
Thank you, my friend.
Brother.
Okay.
Thanks, Artis.
Thanks, Art. So,
all right.
To go to
what a terrific guy.
He is a terrific guy. We got to go. So he's a terrific guy. I've known him for 50 years.
What a gracious
50,
man. I mean,
years.
you could just talk to him all day. Just a sweetheart.
Yep.
Really, really a gracious guy. Frank.
Yep.
My hat goes off to you for having him on the show.
Well, our hats goes off to each other for whatever we do every week. So
it was really cool.
Last week was a great show, and this week will be another great show. So before we go, we're both, I believe, 1-1 on our picks.
That's right. Not only we 1-1, but Frank,
our locks of the week.
Our lock of the week. We're 1. So get it while you can, because guaranteed we're going to go cold. So take a bow now, because it's going to be a long season. But I love what you said to me. I said, Frank, you want to know. You picked the winner. You had Pittsburgh over the Giants. I said that was what we bettors call a cigar game, because come the second half, they just put the Giants away. You light up the cigar, So he says, yeah, your pick was a little bit more courageous. Well, they don't pay you for courage. The bookies say, you know what, Bill? That was a good, let me give you an extra 100 for your courage. They don't work like that. They pay you the same amount they pay me. So anybody out there who gets our picks, they'd be more than happy to get it on a cigar game this week.
Okay, Nostradamus. So who do you have this?
Nostradamus.
Nostradamus.
American Nostradamus.
So who did you slave 5 hours over for this pick?
It didn't take me this long. It took me 3 hours this time. But
3 hours?
3 hours. Just like those trees that are burning in Oregon, 3 hours.
Okay.
And it jumped off the page.
But Billy, don't yell.
Okay.
But,
I get excited.
Don't yell.
I get excited.
Okay.
Derek.
You're good to go. Don't worry.
Okay.
Calm me down. This week I like a 1 o'clock game, and I like an underdog again. Tennessee is playing Jacksonville. They opened up at 9. I believe the line is down to 8.5. They're an 8.5 point favorite over Jacksonville. I like Jacksonville plus the 8.5. That's my lock of the week.
I do like that one also, because I don't think Tennessee has ever beaten anybody by 8.5 in their lives.
But you just got this Jacksonville thing in your head anyway. Jacksonville, you.
Well, that's correct, and I am partial to Jacksonville. But that said, I believe that's a good bet. But let me see now. I have spent no time. I don't know what game
That's
is coming.
That's another thing. I spent 5 hours. You spent 5 seconds. And we both ended up with a winner.
Okay, so Derek, what's the game this week?
Game is San Francisco and the Jets. San Francisco at 6.5. What you got?
No brainer. San Francisco will win outright.
Yeah, they're 6.5 point favorites. They got to win by 6.5.
They will win by at least 6.5. And I don't even know. Now you can tell me where they're playing. Do you know where they're playing, Derek?
I think they're in New York.
Well, they'll still win by. San Francisco got beat last week.
That's right.
They're going to become Hell's a burning.
Now, let me just put a word of caution out there. Now, neither one of us, you got to realize, are going to go have 8-0 or whatever. But the bookies don't put this line up there because they want Frank to buy a new house. And it looks pretty easy. San Francisco 6.5 over the Jets, but
well, that's
like
what
I said.
That's what you say.
They put those lines up laser accurate.
That's
so
what you say.
We shall see.
So,
I like Jacksonville. Frank likes San Francisco.
So next week we have Chris Cope on. Why don't you tell us a little about Chris?
Oh, Chris Cope is a very, very funny comedian, up-and-coming comedian. Of course, he's been crippled a bit by the COVID because most of the comedy clubs are closed. I met Chris my first year at the University of Florida, and Chris was doing comedy already. He's been headlining. How old is he?
He said he's 27, 28?
No, he's older than that. He's been headlining since he was 19. He's about 35 years old now, Chris. But just a very, very funny comedian, and a comic that doesn't depend on rote jokes. You know, he works with the crowd. He's a crowd pleaser.
So we'll see him next week. And I want to say to our watchers, our viewers, if there's any kind of a guest that you would like to get us to book, we'll try to book anybody will be an entertainer or not specific, but specific areas, entertainment, political guests, any kind of guest you want.
I'd like to suggest a few porn stars, Frank, if we could swing that. If you could.
That's why we. Yeah. Okay. If you can get Ron Jeremy.
No, I wasn't thinking about him.
If you can get Ron Jeremy, who's now is now beyond.
I was thinking about the female side, Frank, and I wasn't really thinking about Ron Jeremy so much. You know.
Well, there you go. So our book is entitled "If These Leaps Can Talk." It now is not going to be out this week, but it may be out by the end of next week, and I'm guessing it'll be out October 1st for sure. There's still plenty of time to advance order the book, and with that, we'll say, see ya.
See you is right, and thank you very much for tuning in again. We really appreciate it.
We'll see you next week.
You clear?